And we're live talking about Virgo. And I'm on chapter 9 of Astrology for All by Alan Leo. Virgo, the sign Virgo is the second of the earthy triplicity, the second of the mutable signs, and the turning point from the northern to the southern signs. This sign is especially characterized for its self-containing qualities. It is out of this sign that wisdom is to be born for the majority of individualities. Wisdom is to be born. So what is he saying? That Virgo is, when Virgo is involved, wisdom is to be born for this person, for the majority of individualities. I once met a Virgo sun realtor, and he worked for, he was in my brokerage, and this guy really helped me out, and he didn't have to. And he also spoke at a lot of the training classes, and I do consider him on the path of wisdom. And there was another guy I knew who was a Virgo sun. He was only 19 years old, and he was very, very much older than his age. Not that he wasn't mature, but he just thought, his thinking. You could talk to him. He's half my age, and you could talk to him as if he's the same age. And he would talk down about his friends. Like, he would talk down to his friends, like, as if they're like children, and he was their caretaker. Like, he knew everything about them. Let's see. Belonging to the earthy triplicity, we might suppose that too much of the earthy element would come into their makeup. But this sign represents the virgin soil, the spirit matter, as it were, which yields the most readily to the vibrations passing through it from the other signs. So I guess what he's saying there is, you would think Virgo would be earthy. But he's saying here that it yields most readily to the vibrations passing through it from the other signs. So would that mean that Virgo is, I mean, it's a mutable sign, but that it can be influenced by others? It's not really that grounded. The individuals born in this sign are constructive and able to make the most of their conditions. They are more generally found in the business world, particularly in pursuits which provide for the general welfare of the whole of the community. As characters, they are philosophical and nearly always seem to blend the ideal with the practical in a marvelous manner. This makes them very discriminative, giving them large reasoning powers and very ingenious methods of working. They are the most critical of all individuals, but they usually turn this criticism also upon themselves. They are self-analytical and seem to be always taking themselves to pieces. They are careful and cautious. Before I say anything else, with Pisces being the opposite, Pisces known as the 12th house, known as the house of self-undoing. In this way, certainly Virgo can sabotage or undo themselves through this overthinking and this self-analytical nature. They're careful and cautious and usually act somewhat methodically or with much apparent forethought. They are very industrious, persistent, and tend more toward the practical than the ideal. They're usually precise in details and can readily put right any errors and defects in their own character. But they are also extremely sensitive, not from a sympathetic standpoint, but more from a mental attitude. Think of often being associated with Virgo is service and pets and people who work in the medical field. Certainly, we see that making sense here with the tend toward the practical and can put right any errors and defects in their own character, extremely sensitive, but more from a mental attitude. So not like sensitive like Pisces or like from a sympathetic standpoint, but from a mental attitude, kind of like they're sympathetic in their mind, but they don't really show it emotionally. By the way, I say they, this is not just all people with Virgos. I think depends on the rest of the chart, but you might see this with a Virgo at times. They are very introspective and may be said to know themselves much better than those born under the other signs. I think that's what that kid was talking about, that younger kid. Like he knew himself better than his friends. And that's what he was making. He was making light of them because they didn't know them. They didn't know themselves very well. And he seemed to know them more than they know themselves. They possess that keen intellect which comes from experience more than from education. They have remarkable tact and ingenuity, but they are usually fully aware of all their attainments and are inclined to be somewhat proud of them. When running along personal lines, these persons become more selfish than those of the other signs, since they are always alive to their own interests. They then become rather materialistic and tend to carry the practical too far into skepticism and doubt, while they expect from others what they are not willing to give. They then seek to absorb all the good things in life for themselves and may attain great worldly success as they possess all the ability to enable them to attain their desired altitude. They may be said to have many faults when running to the personal side of their nature, and they become very domineering, using their good intellectual abilities to the detriment of others, and a certain hardness takes possession of them, which causes them to identify themselves almost exclusively with the external world. But when living more in their individuality or becoming what is termed more self-conscious, they are really very splendid characters, becoming discriminative and wise, and often possessing the power to psychometrize, and sense the psychic conditions from a higher standpoint. Yeah, that's what I would say about all of this too. That when the person becomes more self-conscious and has a sense of morality, and they can really overcome all of these petty tendencies. They can use them for what they're good for, and not for the things that they're bad for. As he says here, you can become a splendid character. All people can become splendid characters when they become self-conscious. That's the thing. Will they become self-conscious? That is a big question for another topic. They are capable of making wonderful progress in spiritual development and usually seek to live the most chaste lives, becoming like their symbol, a virgin in purity. This sign acts to the maternal trinity in exactly the same way as Gemini acts to the intellectual seeking to express in itself the union of Cancer and Leo. I guess he's calling the maternal trinity. What is he calling it? The Cancer, Leo, and Virgo. Uh, Seeking to express itself, the union of Cancer and Leo. Those born in the sign possess great recuperative powers. They are rarely sick or ill and may attribute much, if not all, of their ill health to their own habits of life. Being natural students of the laws of hygiene, they know how to live properly. They should always avoid drugs of every kind. As being very sensitive physically, they readily absorb the poisons of drugs into their system, which speedily affect their circulation. I like this one. I think this is something that, if true, is not mentioned enough. Is very positive for a Virgo. The fact that particularly, I would say the moon in Virgo. All moon and Virgos that I've known have been averse to drugs and alcohol, which is great. They are more sensitive to the vibrations around them than persons of other signs. They feel the changes in atmospheric conditions almost directly they begin, and their bodies act like barometers, expressing to the sensitive soul within every change that takes place in their surroundings. Their best medicine for all disease is to be alone with nature and to have around them harmonious conditions. They may do well to study diet and be particular with regard to foods and magnetism surrounding them. And talk about this idea of the best medicine for all disease. To be alone with nature and to have around them harmonious conditions. A lot of people, if aware of this, again, it comes down to this idea of self-conscious, and then having the courage and the will to to at least attempt, even over the long term, to put yourself in these situations. And uh, it's easier said than done sometimes, but I think a lot of times being self-conscious is the first step, which is the most difficult. The Virgo type may be summed up as retiring, ingenious, discriminative, active, and mercurial. They always seem to have their wits about them and are generally self-possessed. They seem, however, to be capable of extremes of good and so-called evil, being much smarter than the majority of those around them. And when living only for themselves, they are capable of outwitting others for the sake of personal gain, but they generally act with a full consciousness of what they are doing. This reminds me of my friend, one of my best friend's mother was a Virgo. And I remember when I was in real estate, when I was doing the real estate thing, trying to get started, and she was selling her house. They were retiring to another state. This little house was worth like 180,000. And I remember sitting at the kitchen table with her and her husband. Her husband's like, "Give this kid a break. Just give him the deal." And she wouldn't do it. She would not give me the deal. And she was so discriminative and discerning and critical. And then she ended up going with someone else who was already in the business for a while that may have cold called her. I'm not sure, because she was selling it. She was trying to sell it by owner for herself. That's why I was trying to how I found out. And the son, my friend, was calling her a bitch. He was saying, "My mom's a bitch. Forget about it. She's not gonna do it." And I mean, I knew this woman for like 20 years. Crazy. I still like her though. Always got along with her. Always felt like she was like a second mother. I think because she was a Virgo. Uh, This arises from their inventive genius and being alive to all the advantages and disadvantages. They can so readily adapt themselves to the requirements of those around them, and they make excellent entertainers, and splendid social companions. And when they succeed in letting go the personal element, they're very beautiful characters. Persons born in this sign can readily adapt themselves to almost any environment, but they have their best success in life in the business world. All commercial affairs succeed under their ingenious management. They are good providers and do remarkably well in all matters connected with foodstuffs. They are natural chemists, therefore succeed in all matters connected with chemistry. They have also a fondness for general literature and have success in literary pursuits from author to printer. They make excellent agents and, in fact, are quite ready to follow any avocation in which activity and general mental ability help them to succeed in life. But their greatest success is to be found more in the business than the professional world. They like to handle solid matters, and to deal in merchandise allows their mental discrimination full scope for all its activities. And really, you can add the houses and things like that. If someone has a moon in the sixth house, seems to be similar to Virgo, a Virgo moon and such. So no one's entering here. I don't have any more stories. So thanks for watching. That's Virgo moon.